Hello everyone, today I have a chess analysis of a game played in 2009 between Hikaru Nakamura and Ruslan Ponomaryov. It has some beautiful ideas that Hikaru manages to find later on in the game, which is why I picked it. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Hikaru has the white pieces, and we see him playing against the Sicilian defense. And especially in the Sicilian, when black ends up putting pawns on d6 and e6, a bishop coming to c4, which is usually what happens to the bishop, does not seem very powerful because it's just going to be faced against a couple of pawns. And therefore, one very creative idea that is becoming more and more popular, and something that I would recommend you look into if you play against the Sicilian, is trying to go for g4. Not only do you grab space, but you also prepare bishop to g2, putting the bishop on a much more useful diagonal for it later on. So Hikaru does indeed go through with this plan. So he finds great ways to develop all the pieces to good squares, whereas if we look at black, notice that the bishops, both of them are stuck, which is one of the downsides to the Sicilian defense. If you play with these d6 and e6 structures, the bishops sometimes take some damage for that. So here, what can black do? Well, Ruslan could try to go and maybe play queen to c7, just improving the position of the queen, and then later on try to figure out how to deal with the bishops. What other options do you have? Well, in the game, we end up seeing g5. It is quite nice. Notice that with the move g4, you do try to initiate, an attack, or at least a plan to grab space on the king's side. So g5 stops f4. At least it stops it coming with that much, it stops it being that powerful because now there's a pawn that can take it, which is exactly what happens. If instead the pawn wasn't here, then having three pawns right here can be very dangerous for black. Because it's just a lot of territory that white has in the king's side. We end up seeing some more developing moves, and you'll notice that black manages to develop the pieces actually quite well. They're all in relatively okay positions, which is why in this position we end up seeing that black starts to attack this king here. So starting by kicking away the knight and then bringing a knight of their own, Ruslan finds a great way to just form a lot of pressure, especially with the possibility of adding a rook onto this file. It could be very dangerous. We end up seeing knight to d2 in the previous move, which is something that I really like. Notice that, this is a piece that you don't like. You don't like this piece coming here and trying to control over the king. And therefore, by moving here, you just say, you're going to have to move this, or I'm going to take it, or you can, take it yourself. But I want to get rid of your piece. So Hikaru does play a great move to try to get rid of the knight. Instead, he doesn't trade, and Hikaru manages to trade. Then we see the queen getting kicked off. And here we see an interesting move that was played, rook taking on c4. I don't really recommend this, honestly, because although, yes, you are weakening the king, the king's position a lot, I don't really see clear ways to take advantage of this. The rook here is completely out of the game. Your bishops could get into, better positions, but it will take time. And when white has their own possibilities to attack, I don't know how you're going to manage to counterattack that quickly. So I don't really like this trade, but it is certainly an option that black went with. We end up seeing queen to b6, attacking the bishop, and queen to c6, offering a trade of queens and also defending the bishop. And now, where can you move the queen? Because you don't really want to trade in this position. You have possibilities to attack. So one option is maybe queen to e3. That's something that I would look at. It seems like a pretty good position for the queen. It's not only defensive kind of on the king, but also it sees this pawn here that could eventually become pretty nice. In the actual game, we do see a5, which is a great option, and it's actually what starts a beautiful move. In this position, rather than taking back, Hikaru goes with a wonderful move, queen taking on e5. This is probably the biggest move and the biggest reason that I chose this game. There is another great move in a couple of moves, but this is just beautiful. Notice that the rooks here on the D and F files just control the whole files, and therefore once the pawn takes, both of these files are opened. And so by simply giving check, the king has nowhere to go because, again, these rooks just control the files. So because of that, you have this beautiful queen taking on e5. Obviously, like I just showed, the pawn can't take. And so what do you do? I mean, the queen's in a wonderful position to continue attacking. There isn't, there doesn't seem to be much ways to defend this. One idea that you could look to try to play is potentially rook to h8, just stopping, obviously, the bishop coming here and giving a checkmate, because obviously now the rook goes ahead and defends that square. In the game, we see a different move. We see king to f7, which is also very much possible. And, black tries as much as possible to get rid of these pieces here. So you see that the pawn just marches forward to try to get rid of this bishop that was on f3, and also open up this rook that can now become, more of a defensive piece. And here we see the second beautiful move. The second that the queen moves away from the protection of this pawn, we see bishop taking on e6. It's just so fantastic. And, once you see the move, it seems very, very obvious what the plan is. If the king moves, you can simply take the rook. If instead, and that would actually be checkmate. If instead the king takes, obviously that takes, the king's defense away from the rook, and therefore the queen can just grab and take. But when you actually look in this position, it's very impressive that Hikaru manages to find this. And beyond that, there's a lot of other ideas for white. You can try to take advantage of this pin potentially. The pawn obviously can't take. So there certainly are many ideas. And it's a great position for white. So once again, in this position, you simply lose the material. And I believe that Ruslan obviously lost the game here. You can't really do much more. I think he resigned. You can't go here because, that's just a horrible position for the king, and you can't go anywhere else because it's not legal. So horrible position for black. Ruslan resigns. That's how the game ends. Make sure you go down in the comments and leave down below future games that you want me to analyze. Also, make sure you subscribe for more of these awesome videos. And if you want to see more of the games that I've analyzed in the past, then click this playlist that's going to appear in the top of your screen right now. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace out.